What's up, everybody? Welcome. Guy here. Hey, guys. A lot to get to today. It is Monday morning. If you are watching on YouTube live, great. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're watching later, same thing. Listen to the pod. That's great. There's going to be a lot kind of packed into this podcast, the audio version of this podcast. Couple of different experts coming up on the show today for some insight. One draft pick that I really like for the 49ers, one undrafted free agent signing that's getting a lot of attention. So we'll get experts on those two things. Jason Scheer, who covers Arizona for 24/7 Sports, is going to come on and talk about Jacob Cowing, receiver the Niners took in the 4th round, who is he's better than Danny Gray, Ronnie Bell. Then the Niners, a lot of people I know like some of the undrafted free agents, but Cody Schrader, who finished 8th in the Heisman voting this year. I got familiar with him near the end of the year because I'm a Heisman voter. And you start looking at these numbers, and I knew I was probably voting only for quarterbacks this year. This is most years, but I'd seen that there are all these running backs around the country this year that were kind of overshadowed by the quarterback. So I did a little bit of a deep dive on Cody Schrader back then, but a guy who really knows him well and what type of player he is, Gabe DeArmond of PowerMizzou.com, is going to come on the show today as well and share some insight on him. And I know, the Niners drafted 2 Florida State guys in the draft. On Tuesday morning, we'll have a Florida State expert come on and give some perspective. Voice holding up good. Did the Colorado spring game on Saturday. And got through it. Some squeaks, but we got through it. Jason Scheer is going to join us here in a second, or in like 5 minutes or so. But so I want to talk about something else before he does, and then we can always get back to this topic. I do think one of the overarching things that happened this weekend was it felt like the 49ers had no problem messing, and they probably would not like this word or use this word, but just casually I'll use the word, kind of messing with Debo. Not really all that concerned about what trade rumors would do, which is fine. That's part of the deal. It's a professional sport, and everyone's got to be a professional, and it's just part of it. But it doesn't feel like they were really all that close ever to trading Debo Samuel. And I just wonder, did they ever really think they'd get any offer for him that made putting all this out there for 2 days, putting him through it, really, for 2 days would be worth it? Now, what I've got on the screen for those of you watching is an excerpt from Mike Silver. And what he wrote here was, for the 49ers in 2024, the potential for implosion will be real. The very qualities that make Samuel a special player, passion, fury, maniacal pride, also make him a high-risk situation. How will it play out? If you think you know the answer to that question in advance, you're delusional. As for those who might know, I ran this by 2 former Shanahan assistants. One said, quote, Debo is not the guy you keep around if you know he's leaving. The locker room will suffer. Another said, another coach strongly disagreed, insisting, quote, he's good either way. Debo is a G. Okay. I don't know which one of those guys is right. I tend to think it's the second guy. Like, I don't think Debo, for those, I've been in that locker room. Debo's clearly a leader. Debo is a leader in the way he plays. Debo leads them out with Trent Williams in the boombox. That locker room operates pretty independent of any individual player, though. Understand that. Like, Debo is over in the corner, not in the corner, but over at his locker, doing whatever on his phone, hanging out, chatting with people on his team. Either way, he's not in the middle of the room setting the tone in that sense. So, and I see Jason Scheer's here. He's going to join us in a second. So, this idea that he might create some division in the locker room, I don't buy, just because that's not really, I've been in this locker room a lot. That's not really how this locker room operates. It doesn't. It's not based on one guy. That said, and we can talk more about it later after we talk about a couple of these players. I do think it feels like there's more to this story than just Niners were open for business. Anybody interested in Debo? I mean, if you're going to do that with one of your best players and one of your leaders, you have to have some idea that maybe you can get what you want. Remember when the Niners extended him a couple of years ago, they were getting phone calls on trades. Like they knew what was out there then. Those offers weren't good enough then. They'd only be worse now. So there's a part of that story that's missing that doesn't make total sense. And one possible explanation is that they wanted this out there, that they didn't ever really have much of an intention of trading him, that they knew, yeah, we trade him for a 1, but no one's offering us a 1 or even a 2. It's not realistic, but that they wanted 48 hours of putting him in an uncomfortable situation. I don't know. That feels like what happened here. All right. We can talk more about that, but one of my favorite players that the Niners drafted, this was a guy coming into the draft that we talked about a little bit. I know around the Niners, we spent more time talking about Luke McCaffrey and Brendan Rice, who both went kind of opposite directions in terms of where some people expected them to go. Brendan Rice went very late. McCaffrey went earlier, maybe than some people thought. But this guy, Jacob Cowing from Arizona, feels like maybe he went right in the sweet spot. And to talk about it, it's funny. Yesterday, I sent him a DM, and we did some videos talking about some other stuff. And I got a comment on one of the videos said, you need to have Jason Scheer on to talk about Arizona. I said, well, too late. He's already booked. So Jason Scheer, who I've talked to a lot over the years through my work covering the Pac-12 at SiriusXM, and very familiar with him and talked to him on radio a lot. And so I hit him up yesterday. WildcatAuthority.com. He is, without question, one of the foremost Arizona experts. And Jason Scheer joins us now on Monday morning. Jason, what's up, man? Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'm just going to add a little here in your name, and we'll get going. All right, so Jacob Cowing, what did you think? Like, where did you think he was getting drafted, and what did you think of the Niners taking him 4th round?
Yeah, I think it's actually a really good fit for them. You know, this was a deep wide receiver class. I think in other years he actually might have gone a little bit higher. I know when scouts came to Arizona games, and I would ask them who you're watching, a lot of them would say Jacob Cowing. It's a good fit, you know, especially with the wide receiver situation that the Niners have. And you won't hear anybody say anything bad about Jacob Cowing. And a lot of people around the program and even the media are very happy for him, and really, really good dude.
You know, I thought there was so much to like about him. One of the things that makes me optimistic that he can fit in with the Niners, understanding that they drafted a receiver in the 1st round. There's not a lot of targets left over for anybody. There's not a lot of targets left over for Ricky Pearsall, let alone for Jacob Cowing. But one thing that I think stands out about him is this year, but really 2 years ago, Arizona had a loaded receiver room and everybody ate. Now, Arizona ran a different offense than the 49ers run, but, you know, he had come over from UTEP and was a really productive player, even though he had Dorian Singer and Tetaroa McMillan, who were also really productive players. So just what's your perspective on, like, he's not going to get 90, I don't even know. I don't have the number in front of me. I'm guessing he had 130 targets or something this year. He's probably had 300 targets the last 2 years, right? Like, that's not happening. So, you know, how do you think he will fit into a situation where he has to be productive on much less volume?
Yeah, I mean, there were games because, like you mentioned, Arizona had Tetaroa McMillan, who is arguably the best wide receiver in the country, and if he's not, he's right up there. And so, you know, there were games where the strategy by opposing teams was basically, we know T-Mac's going to get his, and we're going to focus on Cowing. And Arizona found creative ways to get him the ball, but like, you never heard any complaints, like, at all. And there were games where he only had a couple receptions, and it was more to do with the fact that he was able to force other teams to really focus in on him. And he doesn't need to be at UTEP. He was their offense, right? Like he needed to be their offense. At Arizona, he didn't need to do that. And there'd be games where, he's a part of it. Arizona under Jed Fish, the screen game was a large part of the offense, and he was very good at that. He was by far the best wide receiver that Arizona had in the screen game, and he'd have games where he'd have like 8 catches for 70 yards, and a lot of it was, after catch and just kind of initiating the offense when the run game wasn't going. And, there were games where he had 150 yards. It was just, it depends what the defense gave him, but I think he's ready for really any type of role. I mean, he said all the right things when games happened where he didn't have a ton of catches. Even internally, I never heard anything about him complaining. It was, what can I do to help this team win? And in college, that's probably a little more unique than it should be, because in college, a lot of guys just kind of want their touches, and if they don't get it, they're going elsewhere.
5'8" and a couple eighths of an inch on top of that, 168 pounds. Is that why he's a 4th rounder and not a 2nd rounder or a 3rd rounder?
Yeah. I mean, he is small, and he gained some strength, but he never really, the noticeable size wasn't there. I mean, look, if the guy's 6'1" and 180, 190 pounds, he's a 2nd round pick, right? I also don't know if he's as fast or whatever it may be, but yeah, he is a little on the small side. He didn't really get injured that much. I think he had a couple ankle issues, but nothing serious. But yeah, he is a smaller receiver, especially at the next level.
So as like one, and Jed Fish has a lot, now he's Washington's coach, but a lot of pro style influence in him because he's been around a lot of NFL guys. How much blocking was Jacob Cowing asked to do? Can he do it? At that size, you wonder, but I guess if you're willing, you can do it. So how much of a part of that did you see at Arizona?
A lot. It was a very pro-oriented type of offense, and the receivers had to block. You do not play under Jed Fish at wide receiver if you can't block, no matter how talented you are, especially with that screen game. He was a good blocker, and it is a bit of a surprise that he was able to block so well because of his size, but he's really good with angles. Whether it's blocking or catching the ball, he knows exactly where he needs to be and how to get there. And so they would use him as a blocker downfield. And with his speed, they were able to kind of get downfield and use that screen game with them. But yeah, I mean, there were no complaints with him as a blocker. I mean, Jed Fish didn't rotate receivers very much. And the biggest reason is because T-Mac and Cowing were so good that they basically never left the field.
90 catches last year, 85 catches the year before. He's going to come to the NFL. His quarterback is taller. Brock Purdy probably is taller than both guys he played with at Arizona. But, he was 3 years at UTEP. He's from Arizona, right? So he came home. I think, did he have a young child when he came to Arizona as well? Just fill us in a little bit on his life story.
Yeah, he's from Maricopa, so the Phoenix area, has a young child, wanted to be closer. In UTEP, the reality is that UTEP is kind of a level down in terms of national attention and all that. But he enters the transfer portal, and Arizona jumped right on it because of that family connection. And he committed pretty quickly. I don't know if there's any other schools seriously involved. And his numbers at UTEP were really good. The expectations were high. And I remember, first practice, you could tell right away he was different than any other guy that Arizona had besides T-Mac. Really good guy. Like, everyone likes him. His teammates loved him. His coaching staff loved him. Never complained about anything. Very down to earth, quiet. He's very serious, very business oriented. It was like, he could have gone to the NFL last year. Wouldn't have been a 4th round pick, but he could have gone and probably been picked. But he said, look, I think I can get better. I want to make sure that there's a second contract. And because of that, he came back.
How did he get better last year? Was there anything noticeable?
I think just more consistent. They tried to make him part of the punt return game. That's one of the reasons he came back. But Arizona was never big on punt returns. They just didn't really do it very much.
Wait, stop. Hold on. What is that? What do you mean they didn't do it? They didn't get stops, catching. Or they just would let the ball bounce?
It was just fair catching. It was weird because When Cowing came back, he said one of the biggest pitches was, "I'm going to be a punt returner." And in at UTEP, he was a very good punt returner. At Arizona, it was like all fair catches. Like they just didn't do it really. He had a couple big ones in big games. In Stanford, I believe he had one that went for, basically led to the win in a way. I think it was like a 40-yard punt return. So he can do it. It just wasn't a major part of the game. So that's something I'm curious if he's used in that regard at the next level, because he can do it. Arizona just didn't really, it was kind of fair catch or let the ball go type of deal. But, I think he improved in his overall route running, and making sure that every route was important and just overall as a player. I mean, it wasn't like a drastic jump because he was already so good, but it kind of got a little better at everything, and it helped him move up the draft boards a little bit.
Jason, did I sense any skepticism from you that his 4.38 40 that he ran at the combine is not his game speed?
No, he's fast.
Okay.
He's very fast. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Arizona's game plan with him basically became, let's get him in the open field, get him the ball quickly, and let him beat guys. And it worked. It really did. And some schools adjusted, obviously, but it wasn't, the type of deal where, he's a possession receiver or anything like that. It was, look, we're going to send you deep. But a lot of times what they did is they said, we're going to spread the field. We're going to get him in one-on-one situations. And he's very likely to beat his man.
The Niners, being a punt returner actually is a very valuable thing for the 49ers. They've been inconsistent there. They've had fumbling issues there, that sort of thing. And one thing I like about him is he fits in on their roster is just that they're young. Some of their younger receivers are not consistent. And if you're going to be, the last receiver on game day who also plays some special teams, you might run 2 routes on offense that day. And the Niners guys just have not been, especially Danny Gray, they drafted in the 3rd round a couple of years ago. They bring him in to run a deep ball, and he might not run a great route or he doesn't catch it, and that's it for the day. When you go to, you get 2 balls, maybe. Juwan Jennings, one of their best players last year, he got 18 catches. So that's one thing that appeals to me about Cowing, even though he's a high volume guy. I do feel like he's probably, if he runs 5 routes, he's probably in the right place 5 times. And his hands are good enough that if they throw it to him once, he catches it. Is that accurate, you think? Yeah,
100%. I don't recall. I honestly would have to think about it, but I don't recall ever saying, man, he just ran the completely wrong route. And there's other receivers on the team where you could tell they just ran the wrong route and they landed an interception or broken play or whatever it may be. I don't remember that with Cowing. He's reliable. And in this day and age, you need someone that's reliable. He's not going to go out and probably catch for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns or anything like that. But he's going to be a reliable receiver where, like you said, if he's asked to run 5 routes, they're going to be good routes. And if he gets a catch or a pass to him, he's going to catch it. And I think there's something to be said for that, especially at the college level. He was the guy that they always felt that they could count on.
Did he run many go routes?
Yeah. It was a very pro-oriented offense in the sense where, Cowing, they line up in different situations. T-Mac was the deep threat just because of how talented he is. But, there were times where teams were bracketing him and they'd switch it around and they catch teams deep at the go route with Cowing. And he's had success in a variety of ways with Arizona.
By the way, before I let you go, Tetairoa McMillan, Jonah Savaiinaea.
Yeah.
Is Arizona going to have 2 top 10 picks in next year's draft?
It's very possible. To me, McMillan is the best receiver in the country that I've seen. And Jordan Morgan was just drafted by the Packers, and he's really good. Savaiinaea's upside is higher. I don't know if Savaiinaea right now is as good as Morgan was when Morgan left Arizona, but the upside is absolutely higher. And those 2 guys are going to be top 10 picks. Sicario Davis, a cornerback, also might be a first-round pick. If not, he'll be pretty close to it. Judfish definitely brought some talent back to Arizona football.
He's got it seems like, from what I've heard, we'll see the Washington spring games coming up in a week. Sounds like the Washington talent is pretty depleted. Yeah. So he's going to have some work to do up there. What about Brent Brennan, Arizona's new coach? I thought when the season ended last year, if Judfish had stayed, that there's a possibility that Arizona would be the preseason pick to win the Big 12. What do you think now that they had a coaching change?
Yeah, they gotta add depth. I mean, they're like 15 scholarships down right now. So they got to go to the transfer portal and land at least like 15 guys. They got an offensive lineman from Oregon yesterday, but the depth I think is lacking. They were able to keep the core together. You know, the fact that they kept Fafita and T-Mac and Jonas Habanea is a very, very big deal. And because they kept those guys, they kept the majority of the roster. Now it's just kind of adding depth. By the way, Brett Brennan, huge Niners guy. He's seen at practice a few times wearing a Niners hat.
We've had him on the show once. I mean, obviously being from here, you're saying he goes to Arizona practice in a Niners hat?
We've seen him around campus wearing a Niners hat. I don't remember what it was. He was wearing one a few weeks ago. I don't know if there was a specific reason why, but it was funny. But yeah, big Niners guy. He was probably pumped with Cowan going to the Niners.
Yeah, maybe he was tipping this pick. He was secretly tipping the pick. Anything else on Cowing that stands out? Anything I didn't ask you about that you think people should know about him or what you expect from him?
You know, my buddy and I used to go back and forth on comparisons, and the best comparison, and I don't know if he'll be as good, but the best comparison we came up with was Zay Flowers. You know, in the sense that Zay's a small guy, right, and obviously very successful, and Cowing has that type of talent. So he's a guy where I wholeheartedly believe that he's going to be successful in the NFL.
The name I've seen a few times is Tank Dell.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously CJ Stroud throws the deep ball and Tank Dell can go and get it. But what do you think of that comp? Yeah,
I get that one too. I mean, he's going to be able to extend the offense and go get that deep ball. I really, I've been around Cowing a lot. He works his butt off. That won't be an issue. Great locker room guy. I would be surprised if he doesn't find success in the NFL.
WildcatAuthority.com. Did Arizona have their spring game already? They did, right?
Yeah.
They did.
All right. Yeah, they did yesterday on Saturday.
Oh, they had it. Oh, was Gronk there? No Gronk anymore.
No, they didn't do any gimmicks, nothing, just straight up. They had so many guys that did 7-on-7. It was like, let's just have a practice and get out of there.
Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy portal season then, Jason. WildcatAuthority.com. Fun to talk to you in this context, man. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate it. There's Jason Scheer, WildcatAuthority.com, with great perspective on Arizona. I as someone who likes college football, we could have talked more just about Arizona football. And I know that Jed Fish now at Washington. From what I've heard, the Washington Huskies have a talent problem, and they need to fix it. They just went to the national championship game last year. Ton of good players. Obviously, Michael Penix, Rome Odunze, on and on. Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan, Troy Fatanu, Roger Rosengarten, Braylon Trice, on and on and on. And the cupboard's a little bit bare. So Jed Fish goes from Arizona to Washington. I saw somebody here talk about the undrafted free agent running back. Okay. Coming up in 4 minutes, we're going to do that. Cody Schrader, who the Niners signed from Missouri, was a guy I think both of their running backs are really intriguing. Garendo's really intriguing too. But we're going to talk about, where did this go? Anyway, Gabe DeArmond, who covers Missouri, is going to join us coming up in a couple of minutes to talk about Cody Schrader. So we'll get some Missouri context as well. The Niners, I think camp, last year, all the receiver stuff made it very interesting. I think this year, last year, all the quarterback stuff made it very interesting. This year, all the receiver stuff is going to make it very interesting. Like, they got too many. Who are they going to keep? Has Danny Gray fallen out of favor that quickly? Ronnie Bell was great value for a 7th rounder, but you draft a guy in the 4th round, all of a sudden he gets some priority, right? And that's Cowing. So I think he's a guy that can make an instant impact. He's got the speed. I think he'll be more productive in terms of targets when he doesn't get many of them, run better routes than Danny Gray, that sort of thing. And so I think he's going to immediately I think when we go to Niner practice, we go to camp, we'll see this guy immediately more productive, more consistent. than Danny Gray or Ronnie Bell. And he's just going to take their snaps. I fully expect it. I don't really see much question about it. I mean, we're talking about, this is kind of the geriatric draft. Older players, veteran players, productive players. Here's a guy who played 5 years of college football. He'd been through a lot, right? UTEP for 3 years, has a kid, comes back home. What environment changes, right? You just never know. This guy goes from UTEP, Texas, El Paso, goes back to Arizona, goes back home, has a baby. On one hand, you go, a lot of motivation. But on the other hand, you just never know, right? How will a person handle? Sometimes going back home is great. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's too many people around. Does having a child make him focused on the next level, or does it take him away from football? Well, for this guy, for Jacob Cowing, all of that brought out his best. I don't know that he really changed, other than he just got into an offense that threw him the ball more, so he caught the ball more. And so I think what you get is a really mature guy, a veteran guy, a guy that is just ahead of where a guy like Danny Gray was when he showed up, and where he is. So I think you're going to see a really productive. Now, again, what does productive mean? For the Niners, productive means, if you're Jacob Cowing, productive means catching what's thrown to you and being in the right place at the right time. It doesn't mean catching 5 balls in a game. That's a different kind of, Ayuk is a different kind of productive. Debo is a different kind of productive. So much of being this type of guy is just, am I in the right place at the right time? And, they would throw Danny out there for a route or two, and it didn't work. It hasn't worked. And he hasn't been healthy. So 5'8", 202, he did not do the bench press at the combine by choice. So can he block? I mean, Jason said yes. And, I think that's one thing with Jed Fish. Jed Fish is a very pro-influenced coach. I mentioned that, and Jason Shear knows better. He's a very pro-influenced coach. And so this guy's been around a lot of pro-influence and handled it well. I also do think Jason's right. Tetero and McMillan, I don't remember if he was – I think he might have not even been in the final 3 for the Bolitnikoff Award. But he is a true junior this year at Arizona. And he's going to be – that's the guy. That's the dude. The next year's receiver, that's the guy. Next year's quarterback classes, we'll see. I mean, I was at Colorado this weekend and saw Shedeur Sanders and talked to Shedeur Sanders. I think he's probably the top quarterback in next year's draft, but that's a conversation for another time. But yeah, I really like this pick. I think this guy immediately steps in. Now, the other guy that's come up a lot, there are some that believe that this guy, Cody Schrader, could maybe be better than Isaac Guerendo, the 49ers drafted running back. Guerendo's been a guy that some people really had targeted to the Niners for a long time. Even before there was that tweet that popped up that was like, oh, Guerendo, Niners like him, and then it got deleted very quickly. But I'm looking at Dane Brugler's Beast from The Athletic, his big board. He has Guerendo 12th. He has Cody Schrader 14th. Now, Cody Schrader's another guy. Old, right? Just a veteran. Went to Missouri, transfer, not a highly recruited player, but then just became a very productive player. And, I'll talk about it with Gabe the Armin when he joins us. He covered Missouri. He's going to be up here in a second. We're just waiting for him to appear here in the chat, and I'll pop him in. But the Shanahans have a history of who's this running back? The first guy, and I don't know if he's the same type of player, but just in terms of a career arc that I think of with Cody Schrader is a guy that played in Denver recently named Philip Lindsay. And Philip Lindsay was a very productive player, a different career, but a very productive player at Colorado. He was old. He'd had knee injuries. He was an undrafted player, and he goes to Denver and makes the all-rookie team his first year and is a 16-game starter his second year, has a really productive career, and has, a 5-year NFL career. And now is out of football, but, for a couple of years was a really, I mean, if you get 5 years out of a running back who's undrafted, that's a hell of a career. So, obviously at this point, Cody Schrader wants more than 5 years, but if you told him he was all rookie team his first year, like you'd go, okay. And that was the Philip Lindsay kind of trajectory. So we'll find out here, is this guy, what type of runner is he? I love this comment from Gold. He says, we just got older. Yeah. You go into the draft and come out as a more veteran group. But I know Schrader was a guy that a lot of people knew of him because he was just a really productive player in college. College football had some really good running backs this year. Now, were they good pro running backs? I don't know. Time will tell. But there were just some excellent running backs. Some of them did not come out in this draft. Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum, Marshawn Lloyd, who we talked about a little bit yesterday. For those of you listening to this podcast, that I'll put that conversation here in the audio version of this podcast. Bucky Irving, Will Shipley. There were a couple other guys who just didn't come out in this draft, who were older guys who have another year. Next year's going to be an old draft again. And let's see here. Next year's going to be an old draft again. So I think the running back situation will be kind of similar in terms of where guys get drafted, but it was secretly kind of, I don't want to say, yeah, it was like, I did a Big 12 game at the end of the year, Texas Tech and UCF. And those are two teams that historically are known for really throwing the ball. UCF had Javon Baker, who's a really good player, but both those teams had really good older running backs, and productive guys. Ned asks, will it be a trend for players to stay longer for NIL money, or is it just a byproduct of COVID? Yes and yes. I mean, first of all, the second part of this question, it definitely is a byproduct of the COVID year. Guys got extra years. So let's say you're a player who, after you play your 4 years, would have been a undrafted guy or fifth round guy. If you have a fifth year of eligibility, which everybody who was a college football player in 2020 had, they got 5 years of they could play 5 full years. You come back to school. If you're going to be an undrafted guy, you come back because you have the fifth year. Now, without NIL, you might not come back. So it's both things. I can make, let's say, if you're going to make 500,000, you stay, but you might stay I'll make 50,000 and stay, as opposed to being an undrafted guy or a 7th round pick. So both things are true. The COVID year thing, by next year, everybody who was a 2020 player, will phase out of football. And so you won't have as many 5-year guys, but you're still going to have free transfer and NIL. So I think you have to factor in the free transfer rule as well. That's a big part of this, right? Like, it's not just that you can get money staying where you are. So you're not just saying, okay, should I go to the NFL and be a 5th round pick, or stay here at school X for X amount of dollars? Or transfer somewhere else for X amount of dollars. So that keeps guys in school as well. So yeah, now I don't think it's going to keep, your quote unquote lottery picks are not staying. Your lottery picks are not staying, right? Your top 10, top 15. Will you get a guy who, I remember Vita Vea, who the Bucks drafted, the nose tackle, great player, out of Washington. He was projected to be a 2nd round pick, like a top of the 2nd round guy, and came back to school to try and become like a top 15 pick. Now, that was pre-NIL. He came back for the NFL to try and get the guaranteed NFL money, or the more guaranteed NFL money, and it worked. So I do wonder with guys like that, if more of them will stay. Right? I'm a top of the 2nd rounder. I can stay for, or maybe I'm a middle of the 2nd rounder. I can stay for, whatever it is, $250,000, or I can go Let me send a text here. Or I can go. Maybe I'll stay, and then try to become a first rounder. If you're that type of guy that can get into the first round because of your talent, then maybe you do that. But that's the long answer. The short answer is yes, absolutely. NIL is keeping guys in school. And so you'll get more, hey, I'm a fifth-year guy. I'm an undrafted guy. I could have come out, but, I may make more money in college if I'm a star player. Let me send a text here. Check in on our boy, Gabe here. Let's see. I got my time zones mixed up. So I told Gabe 11:50 Central Time, which is actually 9:50 Pacific, not 8:50 Pacific. So we'll be back at 9:50. We'll do a special video for let me just see here. Hold on one second, y'all. You guys that Cody Schrader insight was coming. And then I spent the weekend texting so many. I got to go back through the phone from the weekend and add people's names and texting so many people in so many time zones that I got things mixed up. Okay. So Gabe says he needs 10, 15 minutes. No problem. We'll wait on him. And we got a couple of things we can talk about. Let me just communicate this with him. We'll hop in a little bit. So that gives us a chance to go back to a couple other things. One being, if you missed the conversations about Malik Mustafa yesterday, that is on the YouTube feed. That'll be in the podcast feed as well. And then Jarrett Kingston. We did a video on that. And then we did a Ricky Pearsall video. We did a Pooney video. That one was really good. Both those are really good. Well, it seems like a lot of people are really liking the Pooney pick for the 49ers. I like it. We talked about it a lot on Friday night. But as I've been just reviewing kind of national perspectives on picks, he was a guy that the Niners have gotten a lot of credit for taking. If you were watching, I had no interest in them moving up for Suma Taya. I didn't care at all about them moving up for Roger Rosengarten or not, whatever. I wouldn't have done it. I was happy they didn't at the time. I did like the Ricky Pearsall pick. I think, if you went into the draft saying that I was going to take Ricky Pearsall in the first round, and then you kind of watch what has happened since, I think it took some balls. I took some nuts. And you could argue, because it was crazy. But I think what happened was there was a lot of people watching the Thursday first round going overdraft, because they wanted somebody else. And then that somebody else got drafted much later. Like if the Niners had taken A.D. Mitchell at 31, people would be like, all right, yeah. Because you'd seen him mocked at 31. They'd taken Cooper Dijon at 31. You'd been like, yeah, could you see him mock at 31? But it's not like the guy went 32 or 33. A.D. Mitchell, I said this the other night, poor guy, kind of had to suffer through draft night. So I like the pick because I think he's going to be productive right away. The part of it that I don't like is this idea that, and I think maybe Silver tweeted this or somebody tweeted this. And if you're new here, I respect Silver's takes. He's been on the show, but I just, not because of that. I think he's got good. I see it every time I put up a Silver quote. People are like, oh, he's wrong all the time. Guy knows people, and he says a lot of stuff that is accurate. So I do put weight in what he says. So when him and Mayoko, okay, real life reporters were the ones on Thursday, Friday talking about Debo Samuel potentially getting traded. Niners are taking calls. That's weird. Ricky Pearsall, they didn't just draft Debo's replacement. I mean, maybe they did. Maybe in 3 years, maybe in 2 years, maybe Debo will be gone in a year, and then somebody will be in his spot. But there is a difference between drafting a person who will just occupy the same position or occupy the same place on the roster and drafting a person who actually is a replacement, okay? Finding an actual replacement for the things Debo Samuel does is going to be very hard. I think Debo, if we're going to talk about offense, should be more offended by just all the trade talk than the Ricky Pearsall pick. Everybody sees players drafted at their position, not always in the first round. Like Brock Purdy, the Niners aren't drafting a first rounder, but the safeties are getting drafted left and right. No one's asking Hufanga if he's offended, right? Does someone want to check on every defensive lineman? You guys offended? So I don't care if you draft a first round receiver about offending anybody. Like Debo's job is to go be a receiver. Ayuk's job is to go be a receiver. Be offended? No, just go be better than Ricky Pearsall. Danny Gray, go be better than Jacob Cowling. To me, that is just the sport, like whatever. But I don't accept, even though I like Ricky Pearsall, they're like, all right, here's the succession plan. Yeah, let's not forget, people, before we start talking succession plan. They tried to trade out of the 31st pick. Okay. We know that to be a fact. And it's not like some deep buried secret. They didn't draft till there were 2 minutes left on the clock for their pick because they were trying to trade the pick. If they thought Ricky Pearsall was about to replace all of Debo's production, they wouldn't have tried to trade the pick. So let's just put that aside for a second. It's not about that. That said, he's a good player. I think he is going to be immediately productive for them. The part about Debo that's interesting is, to me, the only part really, the most interesting part is why. Why did the Niners encourage 2 days of discussion about whether or not Debo Samuel is going to get traded? That's weird to me. There's something weird about it. The Ayuk stuff's not weird because Ayuk doesn't have a contract extension yet. And it actually makes some sense that somebody might trade a second rounder for Brandon Ayuk. Hell, it might make some sense that somebody would trade a first for Ayuk and a pick, something like that. The Debo one, he is definitely more valuable to you, the Niners, than what somebody would offer you based on his contract, the type of player he is. No one's offering you a first or a second. So the idea that you would entertain calls to maybe get a third rounder, maybe a late second, but I doubt it, for Debo is interesting. You take calls all the time on guys, but you don't necessarily make it a thing. Like they made it a thing. Like they talked on Thursday night. I said Friday earlier when I was talking about Ricky Pearsall. Thursday night about Ricky Pearsall. I watched their press conference Thursday night. I mean, they said like, yeah, we don't see it happening, blah, blah, blah. But they were also kind of saying like, hey guys, hey Buffalo, hey Washington, hey Tennessee, you want to place a call on Debo? Now's just a reminder. Now's the time, which is odd. And I think you just have to assume that it was purposeful. It felt like more to me than just, we're just open for business on anybody. If John Lynch could get 4 ones from me, he'd trade me, that whole thing. So I don't know if I don't know if they are dissatisfied with the Super Bowl performance. I don't know if they think not committed in the offseason. I don't know what it is. but something's weird about it. Now, if you took away all of those like conspiracy theories, quote unquote conspiracy theories, if you want to call them that, it is logical. It is logical to explore trades for Debo Samuel just based on cost, based on value, based on injury history, like all of those things. But he is not replaceable right now, right? Ayuk, based on the type of player he is, maybe if you got a top 3 pick of receivers in this draft, maybe you could like, all right, we'll get Marvin Harrison and we'll just replace Ayuk's production. Maybe. Debo's so unique. It's really hard to just find another wide back and just replace the production. So it's very odd. To me, it's something I haven't put all the pieces together yet, but there's just something odd about it that they would be that overt out of the blue. Because again, the part I get stuck on is like teams can know you're interested in just getting a call. Eric says, "Guy, I disagree. I think McCaffrey can do what Debo does. And in fact, McCaffrey makes Debo kind of redundant. So is it that simple? They love Debo still, but if we can just use Christian to do all the same stuff, no biggie. In theory, but then you see the numbers when Debo's not on the field. They were 2 yards worse per play. That's significant. So in theory, Todd on the stream says, I think Niners see what JT O'Sullivan sees, and we're sending a message. So JT was, dissatisfied with Debo's effort in the Super Bowl. Maybe. Yeah, could be. I don't know. Maybe it's as simple as, hey, he doesn't help us beat the Chiefs. We don't beat the Chiefs with that guy. Could be. I mean, I think that's probably an oversimplification, but could be. All right. Our next guest has been very flexible, and I appreciate his time very much. Your boy here in the Pacific time zone gets time zones mixed up. And yesterday I was texting with our next guest, and I said, how's 11:50 Central? He said, great. Around 8:55 Pacific today, I'm like, I should check in on Gabe, see if he's going to make it. Only to realize he was right on time. I was an hour early. So I texted him and said, Gabe, sorry, my fault. Can you adjust? And he said, yes. Yes, I can. So this is awesome. We appreciate it. Very interesting player, undrafted free agent, signing out of Missouri, Cody Schrader. A lot of you have asked about him. And so it's great to have some expert insight. Gabe DeArmond, powermizzou.com. Powermizzou.com. And all right, he's got his title in there. Perfect. Gabe, what's up, man? Thanks for jumping in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, Guy. Yeah, I mean, hey, if you want to do something at 11:50, we got 40 more minutes. I can jump back in.
All right, we can go 40. No, I won't take that much of your time, but it's good to have you, man. Thank you. I've heard great things about you, so it's awesome to talk to you for the first time. What did you think of Cody Schrader? I guess maybe the first question is, what did you think of him going undrafted? And then what do you think of him going to the Niners as an undrafted free agent?
Well, it's been such an interesting probably year and a half for Cody. You started to hear things a couple summers ago about this walk-on that looked good. He had a good spring game, and I've seen a lot of dudes have good spring games, right? Yeah. The starters don't play a lot, and I'm like, yeah, he's a walk-on, guys. It's a cool story, but I know you get all excited about the walk-ons, but let's not go overboard. Then he has a really good 20.
Oh, Gabe muted himself.
Yeah, right. had a microphone problem. I think we're back now.
Okay.
But had a really good 2022 season, and people started saying, hey, I think he's the guy. And I said all last offseason, if he's your number one back, I don't think you can win big in the SEC. I said, I don't see it. And then he goes out and does things no player in the history of the best conference in college football has ever done. And it got to a point where I thought he would be drafted. Like, I thought it was kind of a foregone conclusion. Hey, he's not an early round guy, but I thought 5th, 6th, 7th round, because of his story, because he became kind of the face of this team who made this big surge in college football this year, I thought somebody would take him. And a little bit surprising to me that they didn't. Now, obviously, the deal with the Niners was announced 5 minutes after the draft ended. So I think that was pretty clear. San Francisco had told him, hey, if nobody takes you, we're signing you. And I know in some cases, guys like that tell teams, don't pick me. Like, I want to go to this place. I've already got a deal worked out. I don't know if that happened with Cody or not, but tough to argue against that being a good place for a running back to go, right? I mean, not like he's going to come in and challenge Christian McCaffrey for a starting position or anything, but it's a system that I think you can plug a lot of guys in and do pretty well.
5'8", 202. He will turn 25 later this year. He's a 6-year college football player. Athletically, before we get to maybe some of that, athletically, what type of player is he?
Not big enough and not fast enough. Like, I will just say that right up front. This kid has been written off at every stage of his career as he can't make it. And all he does is keep making it. You know, he had one Division I offer out of high school. It was from Northern Colorado. They called him the day before his official visit and said, sorry, we took somebody else. So he walked on to Truman State in Kirksville, Missouri, put up great numbers, ran for 2,000 yards one year, said, I want to take my shot, walked on at Missouri, came as the 8th string running back. And I mean, led the team, led the SEC in rushing this year. Just a guy that 100%, if you look at him, if you see him on the practice field, you're going to say, why is this guy here? He's not an NFL player. And nothing about Cody says he is an NFL player until he gets out on the football field and he suddenly does everything you want.
I mean, a guy walking on from a Division II school in his 5th year and becoming a top 10 Heisman vote getter is, I don't want to say it's never happened because I don't know that it's never happened, but God, it feels like that's probably never happened.
Yeah, I mean, you had Baker Mayfield was technically a walk-on, but he was a scholarship Big 12 quarterback in a different place, right? So it's a little bit different.
But I'm talking about a guy playing 4 years of college football before he walks on somewhere else from a Division II school. It's insane.
Right, unreal. And like Eli Drinkwitz, everybody at Missouri will tell you, no, we didn't know what we had. Because if they knew what they had, they'd have given him a scholarship, right? I've said this a number of times. Somebody is going to write a book on Cody Schrader's football career, no matter where it goes from here. Like, even if he doesn't make the roster, somebody's writing a book about what Cody Schrader has done.
What type of offense were they running at Missouri, and does it translate from what you saw there to what he'll be with the Niners?
Yeah, a lot of zone, a lot of inside outside zone runs, stretch play, just kind of find the hole and go. He's a one-cut guy, right? Goes along the line of scrimmage, finds the hole, and there he goes. I'm not going to pretend to be intimately familiar with the 49ers offensive scheme. I have watched a couple games of it in the last 4 years. They've been 2 of my favorite games. I won't say what NFL
we got a Chiefs fan. We got a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, but but I think from people who know more football than I do say that, hey, it fits what he does pretty well. But let's be honest, Cody's ticket to making this roster is special teams.
Yeah. Yeah. And did he play much special teams at Missouri? I mean, I imagine initially he probably did, right?
He did some. Yeah. Now I think as he kind of became the guy that, I mean, he was getting 25, 30 carries a game. As he kind of became the workhorse, you probably put that guy on special teams a little bit less. But he's literally the guy who will, whatever, if you tell Cody to go get the towels and take them to the starting running backs, they're going to have the nicest, cleanest, driest towels they've ever had. The running backs coach here, Curtis Looper, told a story that Cody's graduation ceremony from Mizzou coincided with a practice, and he wanted to skip graduation. And they said, no, you're going to your graduation ceremony. So Looper said he was over at the stadium that night, and he looks out, and there's this guy out there just by himself going through plays. And he's like, what is this? It was Cody Schrader doing that day's practice script by himself because he had missed practice for graduation. And Looper said he sent a video of it to the rest of the running backs and said, this is why he's who he is and you're not.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's an incredible story. Now, it hit a point here where it's like, hey, let's quit talking about the kid's story and let's start talking about how good a football player he is. But this is a new level, and people out there will find out his story, and it will be we got to write about this as if it's never been told, because that's what we do in the media, right? Hadn't been told in our market, so we're going to tell.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. No, it's so let's talk about the football player, because to your point, I think people don't quite realize that it was sneakily, I don't want to say the year of the running back in college football, because it wasn't, because we saw the quarterbacks, but sneakily there were some incredible running back seasons. Maybe not so sneakily, but there were some incredible running back seasons in college football this year. And one of them was this guy. I mean, to be a first team all SEC runner, what were the running backs like in the SEC? And how was he the first team all league running back?
Yeah, I don't know if this was a year with a Derrick Henry, a Todd Gurley, some of the guys that
the Big 12 had some great running backs this year, but maybe the SEC did not.
I mean, the SEC had good ones, maybe not typically what we've gotten used to, but I mean, Cody led the league in rushing. He had a game against Tennessee. He had 200 rushing and 100 receiving. Nobody has ever done that in the history of SEC football. And he had it, I think, by the end of the third quarter.
Wow.
was the day he had that day. So he just kept every single week, just kept putting up numbers. I mean, Missouri started out, he didn't start out super fast out of the gates. They started out with Luther Burden, whose name a lot of NFL fans are going to know next year, going great guns in the passing game in the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then as teams started to say, oh, hang on, Missouri can beat us throwing the ball, then they started handing it to Schrader more and more, and they started beating teams running the ball.
I'm looking at the SEC rushing stats. Probably year of the running back probably didn't apply to the SEC. Jane Daniels was third in the league in rushing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Ray Davis from Kentucky was a good back.
Okay.
Alabama and Georgia had good guys, but not the one. Nick Chubb.
Yeah. How did he have? So you mentioned it. It sounds like if you're going to watch one game of Cody Schrader, Tennessee would be the game to watch. How many catches did he have that day?
Gosh, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers. 7 to 10.
Yeah.
He had like a 50-yard.
Oh, lost you for a second, Gabe. No, what happened to your microphone?
Okay.
There we go. So
okay, we're back.
You're back and you're gone. You're gone again. I don't know. AirPods? No, you're not even using. There you go.
Yeah, I've got AirPods here. Maybe my microphone cable is
okay.
Messed up. Are we
that
back now?
Sense. Yep, you're back. So five for 116 against Tennessee receiving.
Okay, yeah. I mean, he had a 50-yard catch in the first quarter. I think he had the 100. I'm pretty sure by halftime. It was just like whatever Missouri did on that day worked. They could have run quarterback counter 27 times and gotten 400 yards. Every single thing they did that day worked.
I mean, he had 29 carries, 128 against Ohio State.
Yeah. I mean, did it against Missouri didn't play a patsy schedule. They played good teams, and he put up those numbers, no doubt.
I mentioned earlier, so let's go back to it. Almost 25, 6 years in the league, 6 years in college football, not in the league. 6 years is an NFL career. Terrell Davis had a 6-year career. So how much tread, were there injuries in his history? How much tread left on the tires?
No injuries here. No injuries that I know of. I think one fumble in 2 years at Missouri, maybe two. Never had one at Truman State. I asked him after one game this year, he had, 32 carries or something. I said, what's the most you've had? He said, well, I think I had 50 one game in high school. So if he's one of these guys, it truly is. It's like real life Rudy. If Rudy had been actually a really good football player,
yeah,
in college, and if you ask Cody to do something, he's going to go out and do it. And if you give him the ball every snap, he is perfectly happy with it. Now, how many carries does he have left in him? I don't know. That's a big thing with running backs, right? Like, okay, you already ran the ball 982 times in college. How many times are you going to run it here before something happens? It's a fair concern.
Niners tend to really like physical bat, right? Like they love dudes that do not shy away from contact. He's that type of guy.
Oh yeah, he'll take a hit, no question. Because he doesn't have the speed or the shiftiness necessarily to run around a whole bunch of guys. So yeah, he's going to have to hit the hole, and he's going to have to break some tackles and make some guys miss.
Anything else about Cody Schrader we should know that I didn't ask you about? The guy, we didn't really talk about the kind of, I don't know. I'm sure you've talked to him a lot over the last couple of years. What type of guy?
No, it's an amazing story. The fact that this kid is in the NFL at all, however long it lasts, like I said, is an unbelievable story. If he manages to make the roster, which I wouldn't bet against him, if you guys get to talk to him and fans get to hear his story, like it's the kid you love, because in the day and age of transfers and NIL and free agency and all that, it's just the kid that you go, yeah, I want that guy playing for the team I cheer for. Because like he gives me hope that maybe I could have done it, right? Like, and he just is. He's a really good kid. Good story, and I know a whole bunch of people out here certainly are going to be watching closely.
A lot of Niner fans. Not the Venn diagram of Missouri fans and Niner fans probably does not cross over. Would be my guess. There's no.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of it, but there are more now. I will say, St. Louis has a lot of football free agency fans, right? And those who are Mizzou fans will now, since the Rams left, right? Those who are Mizzou fans probably will be heavily invested in the NFC West with Cody, and then with Darius Robinson going first round to the Cardinals.
Yeah. Gabe, thanks for making time, man. Appreciate you being flexible this morning and correcting my mistakes. So thanks for jumping in.
No worries. Thanks, guy. Appreciate you having me.
Yep. Gabe DeArmond, powermizzou.com. You can check out more coverage of Cody Schrader there, and really great insight. I mean, for a guy who was as productive as he was to go undrafted, I thought it was a great point by Gabe to say that he went, how quickly he signed with the Niners, he thought was telling. So that was interesting insight. All right. I know we've jumped around today. We did some Debo, then we did Cowing, then some more Debo, then some Cody Schrader. But part of that was, getting a couple guys in live, and it was fun. Okay. There will be I think they'll bring some more stuff today. And then Thursday morning, Niners drafted 2 Florida State Seminoles. Not Thursday morning, Tuesday morning. I'll do a live show Tuesday as I would anyway, but we'll get some expert insight on both Florida State guys that the Niners drafted on Tuesday morning. That's it for this. Thanks for hanging, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Later.